Niccolo Machiavelli was a man born into a world of constant conflict and shifting power. He lived in Florence, Italy, during the Renaissance, a time of great art and, honestly, great violence. He was not a king or a general, but a diplomat and a political thinker. His job was to watch powerful people, to understand their moves, and to report back to his own city's leaders. He saw firsthand how rulers gained power, and more importantly, how they lost it. This was his true education. He spent his life observing the raw mechanics of human ambition, learning that what people say they will do and what they actually do are often two very different things. He studied history not for its grand stories, but for its practical lessons on control and survival. Machiavelli's importance comes from his willingness to write about power as it truly is, not as we wish it to be. Before him, writers often described ideal rulers who were always good, just, and loved by their people. Machiavelli looked at this and saw a dangerous fantasy. He argued that to hold on to a state, a ruler must be willing to do things that are not considered morally good. This honesty was shocking to many people in his time, and it remains controversial even today. He was not interested in what was right in the eyes of God, but what was effective in the world of men. His name, Machiavelli, became synonymous with cunning, manipulation, and the cold pursuit of power. His unique perspective was shaped by personal failure. When the powerful Medici family returned to rule Florence, Machiavelli lost his position. He was accused of conspiracy, arrested, tortured, and then exiled to his small farm outside the city. It was in this forced retirement that he had the time to write down everything he had learned. He was a man stripped of all influence, writing about how to gain ultimate influence. His books were a desperate attempt to regain favor and to prove his value to the new rulers. He wanted to show them that he understood the game of power better than anyone else, and that his knowledge was an invaluable weapon for any leader. This separation from the world of politics allowed him to see it with incredible clarity. He was no longer part of the system, so he could analyze it without bias. He wrote about the necessity of being feared, the usefulness of deception, and the importance of adapting to changing circumstances. He did not invent these tactics. He simply was the first to document them with such brutal and unapologetic frankness. He pulled back the curtain on the theater of politics, revealing the hidden levers and gears that control the fate of nations. For this reason, leaders, thinkers, and strategists have studied his work for over 500 years, seeking to understand the timeless laws of power he described. Machiavelli's most famous work is a short book called The Prince. He wrote it as a guide for a new ruler, Lorenzo de' Medici, on how to acquire and maintain power. It is not a book of philosophy or abstract ideals. It is a practical manual for leadership in a dangerous world. The Prince does not waste time on how a good person should act. Instead, it focuses entirely on what a leader must do to succeed and to protect his state from enemies, both foreign and domestic. The book is direct and to the point, offering clear advice based on historical examples and Machiavelli's own observations of the powerful men of his era. One of the core ideas in The Prince is that a ruler must be willing to act immorally to achieve a greater good, which is the stability and security of the state. Machiavelli famously asked whether it is better for a ruler to be loved or to be feared. He concluded that while it would be best to be both, it is much safer to be feared than to be loved. Love, he explained, is a weak bond that people will break whenever it benefits them. Fear, however, is maintained by the dread of punishment, which never goes away. Therefore, a wise ruler should use cruelty when necessary, but do so quickly and decisively so that he can then return to a more stable state of command. Another key concept is the idea that the ends justify the means. This means that a ruler should not be judged by the morality of his individual actions, but by the final result. If a prince uses deceit, manipulation, or even violence to save his country from chaos or invasion, then those actions are justified because the outcome was successful. This is a radical departure from traditional morality, which teaches that certain actions are always wrong, regardless of the outcome. For Machiavelli, the only real crime for a prince was failure. The survival and prosperity of the state were the ultimate goals, and any method used to achieve them was permissible. Finally, Machiavelli stressed the importance of appearing virtuous, even if you are not. He advised that a ruler should seem to be merciful, faithful, humane, religious, and upright. It is not necessary to have all these qualities. but it is absolutely necessary to appear to have them. People judge more by what they see than by what they feel. So a leader's public image is a powerful tool. A prince must be a great pretender and dissembler. He must know how to manipulate perceptions to maintain the support of the people and the respect of his rivals. This duality, being one thing in private and another in public, is central to Machiavelli's strategy for survival. Machiavelli famously wrote that a prince must learn to be both a fox and a lion. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. Therefore, a ruler must be a fox to recognize the traps, and a lion to frighten the wolves. This means a leader needs to be both clever and strong. He must possess the cunning to see deception and navigate complex political situations, like a fox. At the same time, he must have the strength and willingness to use force to crush his enemies and deter threats like a lion. Relying on only one of these natures is a recipe for disaster. History provides many examples of leaders who embodied this principle. Cesare Borgia, a contemporary of Machiavelli and a major inspiration for the prince, was a master of this dual nature. He was known for his ruthless ambition and military strength, the lion. He would swiftly and brutally eliminate his rivals. However, he was also incredibly cunning, the fox. In one famous incident, he invited his main opponents to a friendly meeting to negotiate a truce. Once they were all gathered and unarmed, his soldiers surrounded and executed them. It was a cruel and treacherous act, but it eliminated all his primary threats in a single decisive move, securing his power over the region. Another leader who used these ideas, though perhaps unknowingly, was Otto von Bismarck, the man who unified Germany in the 19th century. Bismarck was a master strategist, known for his realpolitik, a political philosophy very similar to Machiavelli's. He was a lion when he needed to be, leading Prussia through 3 short successful wars to establish its dominance. But he was also a fox, skillfully manipulating diplomatic alliances and provoking his enemies into acting rashly. He tricked France into declaring war, a conflict he knew Prussia would win, which allowed him to rally the other German states to his cause and create the German Empire. Even in modern business and politics, we can see the shadow of the fox and the lion. A successful CEO might act as a lion when making tough decisions like laying off workers to save the company from bankruptcy. But that same CEO must be a fox when negotiating a complex merger, using charm and clever tactics to get the best deal. They understand that strength alone is not enough. It must be guided by intelligence and strategy. Leaders who can switch between these two modes, between brute force and subtle manipulation, are the ones who often navigate the treacherous waters of their fields most effectively, proving Machiavelli's ancient advice remains potent. Even 5 centuries after his death, Niccolò Machiavelli's ideas remain incredibly relevant. We continue to study him not because we want to become tyrants, but because he provides a clear and unfiltered look at the nature of power. He teaches us to be realistic about human behavior. He reminds us that people are often driven by self-interest, fear, and ambition. Understanding this is the first step toward protecting yourself from manipulation and navigating the complex social dynamics of any group, whether it is a government, a company, or even a circle of friends. His work is a warning, a guide to recognizing the strategies others might use against you. Learning about Machiavelli is important for anyone who wants to be an effective leader. While his advice on cruelty and deception is controversial, his core lessons on pragmatism, preparation, and adaptability are timeless. He shows that a leader cannot rely on good fortune alone. A successful ruler must study history, understand his enemies, and be prepared to make difficult decisions for the greater good of his people. He must be proactive, not reactive. This emphasis on strategic thinking and understanding the harsh realities of the world is why his book, The Prince, is still required reading at military academies and in business schools around the globe. Furthermore, Machiavelli's work empowers ordinary citizens. By understanding the tactics of the fox and the lion, we become better able to recognize them when political leaders use them. When a politician appears to be exceptionally virtuous or tries to stoke fear in the population, a student of Machiavelli can see the potential strategy at play. It helps us to look beyond the words and appearances and to analyze the actions and their results. This critical perspective is essential for a healthy democracy, as it allows us to hold our leaders accountable, not just for their promises, but for their actual performance and methods. In conclusion, Machiavelli was more than just a teacher of tyrants. He was a political scientist who dared to describe the world as he saw it. His legacy is not an endorsement of evil, but a sober analysis of power. He gave us the tools to understand the often unpleasant mechanics of how leadership works. Whether we are leading a nation or simply navigating our daily lives, his insights into human nature and strategy offer a valuable, if unsettling, wisdom. To ignore Machiavelli is to walk into the world of power unarmed and blind. And that is a risk that no one, from a prince to a commoner, can afford to take.